The religious landscape of the Indian subcontinent, from the Vedic age to the modern nation-state. Part 3. The Rama movements and the new religions. Faith on the move and the great challenge to the old order. In the 6th to 5th centuries BCE, the upper Ganges plain, particularly the regions of Magadha and Kosala, became the stage for profound questioning of the old order of Vedic religion. Although the sacrificial rites, yajna, and the authority of the Brahmins still prevailed, doubts began to emerge. Was access to ultimate truth and liberation necessarily bound to elaborate rituals and the monopoly of the priestly class? Out of this atmosphere of discontent and spiritual searching arose the Rama movements. Rama, pronounced Śramaṇa, meaning striver or seeker. These wanderers renounced household life, setting out into forests and along trade routes to experiment with paths of inner discipline, tapas, austerity, dhyana, meditation, yoga, strict moral vows, and even forms of self-mortification to subdue desire. The outlines of this movement appeared as early as 800 to 600 BCE and reached full vigor in the period immediately before and contemporary with the Buddha and Mahavira. Rama, a field of spiritual experimentation. Rama was not a single religion but rather a field of thought and discipline that nurtured diverse ascetic communities and wandering renunciants. The most influential were a Buddhism, founded by Gautama, which charted a middle way between indulgence and extreme asceticism, a Jainism, led by Mahavira, who upheld the principle of ahis, non-violence, and rigorous vows. Alongside them stood other contemporary schools that defined the contours of the Rama landscape. A Dvika, associated with Makli Goslar, which asserted the doctrine of niyati, absolute determinism. A Ajna, skeptics who claimed that ultimate knowledge could not be attained. A Lokyada, a Kurvka, a materialist school holding that only perception, pratyeka, is valid knowledge, rejecting karma, afterlife, and liberation, moksha. Scholarly note: much of the surviving information about the Dvikas and Makli Goslar comes from Buddhist and Jain texts, so modern scholars caution against uncritical acceptance of potentially polemical accounts. Britannica, IEP. Ways of life and the challenge to the old order. These wandering ascetics, known as parabjaka, travelled in small groups, under the guidance of a teacher. They ate sparingly, often only once a day, dressed simply, and some groups, such as the Jain Digambras, even went naked to renounce attachment. Their goal was not to worship gods for blessings but to train the self to overcome the bonds of desire and karma. A Buddhism, Gautama experimented with severe austerities to the brink of death before discovering the middle way, proclaiming the Four Noble Truths and the doctrine of anat, non-self. A Jainism, Mahavira emphasized extreme nonviolence, strict vows, and the philosophy of anekantavda, many-sidedness of truth. The aim was to purify the jva, soul, of karmic matter until it attained kevala, liberation. A Dvika, stressed acceptance of destiny, seeing practice as cultivating serenity within the framework of predetermined fate. A Kurvka affirmed this worldly existence, valuing direct perception and sensual enjoyment, while rejecting rituals and belief in an afterlife. Comparative religious insights. A sacred authority, from the monopoly of Vedic ritual and priestly control, to the search for inner wisdom. Buddhism, Jainism, and other Ramas. Their ultimate goal, from sustaining ta, cosmic order, to liberation from suffering, nirva, kevala, moksha, or outright denial of the afterlife, kurvka. A ways of knowing. The Vedic tradition upheld scripture and ritual. The Ramas turned to meditation and direct insight. Jainism emphasized many-sided truth. Kurvka insisted on empirical perception. A social impact. By criticizing caste and ritual monopoly, the Ramas created space for new religious communities, sanghas, ascetic orders, that broadened access to spiritual life beyond elite control. Documentary summary. The Rama movements embodied the power of faith on the move. By rejecting the monopoly of elaborate rituals and priestly caste authority, They opened new avenues of experimentation. From this soil grew Buddhism and Jainism, while even radical materialists like the Kafkas sharpened the boundaries of debate. Together, the Ramas gave the Indian subcontinent a shared language of discourse around karma, sasra, and moksha. This dynamic arena of debate, synthesis, and competition ensured that the religious landscape of ancient India remained vibrantly alive.